Talking about erectile dysfunction, it isn't easy. Most of us brush it off, or we blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we make excuses. Honey, I had a long day at work. I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, guys, it's easy. It's easy to talk about with a real healthcare professional who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you are going to get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward, it's simple, and it's discreet. Getting started is easy. Just go to getroman.com/Chael and complete an online visit. Go to getroman.com/Chael today. If approved, you'll get $15 off your first order of ED treatment. Who is Jake Paul going to fight next? I mean, it's very stunning the state that we're in, that we're discussing who Paul is going to fight next, as though these are fights that he's done in the first place. But when the guy's a main event, oh, and by the way, come hook or crook, is winning. You can only dismiss him so long. There's going to be a spectacle. There's going to be a match. And Paul is the one guy who's made boxing interesting. Right, we got Fury and Joshua discussing what hotels they're going to stay at. That is the headlines that you're hearing from these two idiots. What venue are you going to get in? What are the rules? Is there going to be horsehair in the gloves? Right? You have idiots that can't decide on simple things for the most unsophisticated sport in the known to mankind. But these are the talks that you have. Paul, meanwhile, goes and sets up a show, brings in some buddies to entertain, and goes out and boxes. I mean, right, he deserves a level of credit. So who's he going to fight? And I bring this to you to stop everything because I keep getting brought up. And you're going to run into guys like me who become a problem. Where even if you could draw and sell and have a level of interest, I'm too big. I would look like a fool going after Paul. I mean, in all fairness, I would look like a fool. Paul keeps choosing to fight guys who don't respect their career enough to stick a needle in their ass every now and then. He's not going to have that problem with me. I'm going to have the same secrets that Paul has. But I have to take myself and other guys, right, I'm a broad stroke. You have to take guys like me off the board. We would be embarrassed to go out there. We would be embarrassed to bounce around and do these things. We would also be very insulted if there was ever a question, right? If I ever got that question, Chael, could you beat Paul? I've never been asked that, but I can't imagine that I would. And if I was ever, I would be greatly insulted. It's one of those things. So who do you go after? And I thought that Helwani made a great point as it pertains to Paul. Helwani came out and said he has proven that he can do this. The question is, who's he going to go up against next? And Ariel maintains that it needs to be against an actual boxer. I think there's some truth to that. The problem with the boxers is it's a spectacle when you're dealing with Paul. There has to be a level of interest. There has to be somebody who's interesting. And that's something that the boxers don't get. And the boxers will always think being interesting comes out to insult. And then when somebody else insults them, they start insulting a little bit louder. And then when somebody insults louder with them, they then begin cursing. And then when the cursing doesn't work, then they get face to face. And it's just weird, man. There's so many different ways to be interesting, but nobody has brought that into boxing. Tyson Fury represents none of the things that I just said, and he's the most interesting character in boxing. Just to prove my point. But when you're dealing with the boxers, you're dealing with a level of sophistication that just doesn't exist, and they can't get advice from anybody because their own team lacks said sophistication. The same reasons that you're not going to see me fighting Paul is the same reasons you're not going to see Paul fighting Oscar. Oscar needs somebody to fight, but size is a very big deal to Oscar. Even in his drugged up state that was his commentary Saturday night, where the number one verb of his vocabulary was baby. Oscar was working baby like Eddie Murphy 1980s used to work the F word. It was very tough to listen to Eddie's stand-up, as funny as he was and as big of a star as he was at the time, because it was the F word every 2 and 3 words. Oscar was doing that with baby. He couldn't say a word, baby, without saying baby. I mean, whatever drugs he was on, right? So it's one of these things. If you're Paul and you're going, hey, wait a minute, I am at least taking this sport serious, and I do have a lot of young kids around me. I can't get in there with a guy that was coked up 2 days. I just can't do it. He's already a little smaller than me. He's old enough to be a relic in a museum. and he's on drugs right now. Right? I'm in here training. I'm in here fighting. That guy's snorting blow. It's just a tough sell. So even though an Oscar who is thirsty and hungry and looking for a fight, it's still tough if you're Paul. If you're going, man, first off, I'm bigger than you. I'm literally half your age and I'm sober, right? It's just a tough sell. And I think that's where you start to get the Dylan Dennises of the world. Now, Dylan Dennis has every right to go and fight Jake Paul. That fight must happen. For what Paul did to Dylan when Dylan was just minding his own business, rehabbing a knee injury and trying to do a media spot with Brendan Schaub, Dylan has the right to fight him, but that pertains Coker. And I spoke to Coker about this, and I got a very non-definite answer, but I can tell you Scott wasn't against it. He was not hands down no. I bring Coker in it because Dylan Dennis is under contract with Coker as his promoter. Coker also made it clear I need to be presented with something to see how we fit into this. So Coker's, without using the words, what I interpreted from Scott is, if there is a co-promote opportunity, you want to bring your guy and I'll bring my guy and we can all work together, feel free to stop by my office. You're going to have that same kind of a reaction from Dana White if you go and pick a UFC guy. Dana is very unlikely to let that go, but if you come at him right, which is organized from the jump, don't ever ask him, can I just have your guy? Come to him openly and say, here's your involvement, here's mine, here's what the plan is, what do you think? And most guys don't come at Dana proper. They come in hoping to get something for nothing. You've now lost the respect of Dana and the deal's just dead. He's not going to take your phone call in the future. So if you have something you want to present to Dana where he gets to participate, since you're asking him for his guy, show a level of respect to the history of the business, understand how co-promote works, and have a physical working plan, then you might be able to get a conversation with Dana, which would open things up. If you were to take a current MMA guy who doesn't focus on boxing, but they're current, they're in shape, they're a sharp athlete, I think that story is probably what you're going to need for Paul. You don't want to bring in a pure boxer or even a good boxer. But you do want to bring in a tough guy that has a level of interest. And I think now that Paul has shown us that he takes this seriously and that he wants a serious opponent, but of equal talent. I caught one Paul interview. It was on TMZ, but I appreciate it because Paul said, give me a worthy opponent. Now, if he would have stopped right there, we'd all be rolling our eye. A worthy opponent. You're terrible at this. But he went and said that. He said it in a very macho way. He said, give me a worthy opponent. Don't give me a world champion because I'm not a world champion. But don't give me somebody that's never done it, isn't going to take this seriously. Give me somebody like me who's got a dream, is willing to get in the gym, who's willing to work hard and go out and contest this under the rules and live with the result. And I always appreciated that in Paul. I always appreciated that interview. But I think that Ariel does make a fair point, which is Paul is going to need somebody who does know what they're doing. The idea of the spoof or of the NBA guy or of the rapper over here, I think we've seen that Paul is a little bit better than any of that. We've also seen that he's not a top boxer, even by amateur standards, right? The Olympic Games are in 5 months. There's a reason Paul isn't trying out for the team, even by amateur standards. He's limited. But that doesn't mean he isn't drawing. It doesn't mean he isn't tough, and it doesn't mean he isn't getting better. I'm seeing some real positives from this nerd. And at 24 years old, if he doesn't have the same habits that Oscar does, or the other guys within this space, if he can be the shining light, I think he can do some real positivity. He's with Triller. Triller's a bunch of scumbags, it appears. But if Paul can work around that, sharpen up the show, make it a little bit cleaner, add a little bit of respect back, not only will they do the 1.5 in paper, they'll do bigger, and they're going to do better. And I think that my partner, Ariel Helwani, makes a very fair point in saying that.